Hello and welcome to another episode of VMware Today. I'm your host, Phil Sellers, joined today with Barry Browne. Barry, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, coming off a longish weekend for Canada Day here in the Great White North. Um, I guess you're coming off 4th of July too, so hands in the air. You got all your fingers and toes.
Hey, yeah, all 10 are here, all 10 fingers. As I told my wife, those are the money makers. So I don't play with explosives on 4th of July. I let my friends handle that. Yeah, shout out to all the pyros out there who may be missing a digit today.
Hang on a sec, Phil. You're a professional podcaster. Isn't your face your money maker now?
No, as my wife tells me, I've got a face for radio, so we'll just stick with that today, right?
Fair enough. But you had enjoyable holidays. You did some barbecue, you did some fireworking. You did all the good things you do on the 4th of July. Have some beers.
Absolutely, yeah. We went over to friends, spent some time in the pool, had barbecue ribs, burgers, and hot dogs. So had a fantastic time hanging out with our friends and just celebrating our nation's independence.
Right. Hey, let me ask you a question, completely off topic. We're not gonna, before we get into VMware. In our XenTegra internal Slack channels yesterday on 4th of July, I saw everybody talking about what they're smoking for dinner. Is smoking really, really big in the US, period?
Yeah, especially here in the last few years, I'm seeing lots and lots of folks adopt smoking. So briskets and ribs and things like that. Our friend's neighbor smoked 3 different types of ribs. I think he said it was 4 racks of ribs that he smoked. There were tons of food,
Wow.
but different sauces, different rubs, things like that. So I've got a lot of friends who are into it.
But this is the thing, you get up at 4 a.m. and you start smoking for the day and then you eat at kind of 5, 6 p.m. Is that the idea? You got to really prepare for your meal?
I even know people that start it the night before and let it smoke all night. So yeah,
Okay.
it's not a fast way, but it's definitely flavorful. So I know I've got great friends. I love going down to the Texas area and having their brisket and other smoked meats. It's just phenomenal. So I haven't had anything better than that. Sorry to my friends here in the Carolinas.
So it sounds like we need to make an excuse to get together in Texas.
Hey, I keep trying to find a reason to go visit a customer or two in Texas. So absolutely.
Well, now that I'm in my mouth, I'm drooling a little bit, thinking about barbecue. Let's talk about something else that's not delicious.
Well, I think the topic for today is going to be a follow-up to our conversation about vSAN. So we've got some really cool additional news from VMware came out with the introduction of vSphere 8. And so we're talking about the vSAN Express Storage Architecture. So brand new architecture, and well, we're pretty excited about it. I mean, it should be much higher performance for all sorts of hyperconverged workloads, and it's the latest thing on the block. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about
Yeah.
express storage
Well,
architecture.
let's take a step back for a second. So we had our traditional vSAN, high performance, it worked as it said, as it did on the box. So why would VMware, bring out a product such as Express Storage Architecture? What was the gap in the market that we're trying to fill, or what the, like, for lack of a better, why would they engineer something like this?
It's a great question. And really, to think about it, you have to think about all the conversations that storage makers really have. So you have traditional architectures. So I'm going to pick on NetApp for now.
Mhm.
You've got the traditional FAS architecture, the filer architecture that's been around 20 something plus years. So a lot of the competitors will say, well, that's old architecture. It was really engineered around spinning disk. It was really engineered around older technology, and that they bolted on additional features and functionality to make it compete today. Um, and then you've got architectures like Pure Storage, where they go to market and they're like, oh, we were built in the SSD, we were built in solid state, we were all flash from the beginning. We don't have the historical baggage of having to tier and handle spinning disk. We're pure flash. And really, that's a great analogy for what's going on here between the original storage architecture and express storage architecture.
Mhm.
ESA is really built around all NVMe storage. It's kind of the reaction to moving from your traditional SCSI based storage technologies to something that's on PCIe, so NVMe based storage here in this case, where we've made a lot of advancements in the technology.
Right. So to kind of answer my own question, what is express storage architecture? It's kind of in the name. Express meaning fast, faster than spinning Rust. Like you said, it's the latest and greatest in PCIe and NVMe. So it sounds like it's all about performance. So I guess the question is, with the recent release of vSAN 8, is ESA on by default, or is it, in terms of configuration and architecting your storage, if I'm upgrading from 7 to 8, what do I as a vSAN administrator need to worry about?
Yeah, so from this point forward, I think you can go in with ESA, and that's your fresh start, and you move forward from there. One of the big differences is it's going to be a completely different hardware compatibility list.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to make sure that you fit within that HCL, or that you're buying ready nodes or hardware that's approved for ESA. And so that's not necessarily a given in an upgrade path for you.
Right. So you said something interesting there. Let me just ask a question though. You said ready nodes. So there's ESA approved ready nodes you can buy today?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
VMware has partnered with hardware vendors for a number of years to create ready nodes, and it's just approved hardware configurations that will basically streamline your process for doing vSAN technology. So everything there, soup to nuts, has been tested. It's part of the HCLs. You don't have to worry about it. It's an easy path for adoption. And so you have all the major hardware vendors that have some version of a ready node. VxRail from Dell is a great example of that. Our friends over at Dell have those. And so that's one example of a ready node configuration where you can go in, and as a customer, you may be a little more constrained because you're working within that hardware compatibility list. You're not going to necessarily have all of the different options, but you'll have different versions of ready nodes that you can choose from to meet your needs.
Okay. So, for some of the SMB customers out there who may not do wholesale refreshes to get to buy these ready nodes, where they may have an existing vSAN 7 infrastructure, but they know they need some more capacity. So can they go out today, buy a vSAN 8 ESA approved ready node, integrate that with 7 until the rest of their stack is ready to be replaced, and then move to vSAN 8 and ESA?
It's kind of hard to do.
Okay.
And here's the reason why. Mixing different technologies within the same vSAN is not necessarily an approved path for you. You really want to have all your different vSAN nodes match in hardware configuration. And there's different reasons within the way that the software works that you really want to do that. So if I'm looking at ESA, I'm really going to think about this as a generational upgrade technology. And so as I look forward to moving my vSAN 7 and retiring that hardware, I'm going to look at ESA as kind of that next generation. Maybe it's a point sort of solution sitting behind something that needs really high performance, like your transactional databases, or something that's a real-time application, voice application or something like that, where you really want to have the best possible performance.
Okay. Me being an ex-customer, I have to ask the question for our audience. Is ESA a separate license?
It's not. So ESA is licensed based on the version of vSAN that you have available. And I'm trying to pull up the list. I believe it's in both Advanced and Enterprise Plus. Let me just double check that, because I don't want to give bad guidance as we're talking.
Okay.
But we have a list of different things. So it's the same vSAN licensing, but there are different editions that allow you different capabilities. So as we talked about vSAN in our previous and vSAN Plus, There are 4 different editions: standard, advanced, enterprise, and enterprise plus. Data at rest encryption comes with enterprise and enterprise plus, but not the lower editions. Erasure coding, dedupe, and compression come with advanced, enterprise, or enterprise plus. And I believe that ESA is the same. It is available in both advanced and enterprise, the vSAN plus subscription, and also the traditional enterprise plus, which I don't know that we necessarily talked about that, but enterprise plus for vSAN also includes ARIA,
Right.
which is the vRealize suite, which has been rebranded. So you get some ARIA operations capabilities when you bundle enterprise plus.
So just a quick note on ARIA. I was looking at our potential topics for podcasts going forward, and ARIA is on the list. So stay tuned, and we'll get to that. I want to say it's in about 2 or 3 weeks when we're going to have that conversation. ARIA is pretty interesting. Yeah, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole today, but it's certainly that piqued my interest with the whole rebranding and what vRealize has become.
Well, funny story. I was in the room when the whole vRealize branding came out, and I was in the room with a large number of VMUG leaders. We were there at a VMworld event, and collectively there was a groan. And now it's funny, we're going through another rebranding with ARIA, and I feel like there's a little bit more of a groan again because we've normalized vRealize. We know what that means, so we're keeping the marketing folks busy.
Yeah, well, just between you and I hope companies learn from what Citrix did. They tried to rebrand everything. It's like, oh, we better pivot. Let's rebrand everything back to what it was. I'm talking about you, Mr. NetScaler.
Exactly, right. It's funny. Some things become synonymous with the technology, and it's hard to break from those brands. We Google things. It's a verb.
Yeah.
It's synonymous with going to search. So when you have that kind of brand recognition, I think it is really tough to try and pull that away. And NetScaler was certainly one of those. It had that brand recognition. So I feel like that's why it came back.
Yeah, we don't need to beat the NetScaler horse to death, but I never really did stop calling it NetScaler because everybody understood NetScaler, right? With Citrix ADCs, blah, blah, blah. NetScaler, long live NetScaler. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, you and a lot of people. And that's the truth here. I mean, we're seeing smarter choices just between the different technologies and stuff. I frankly I like the ARIA brand. It's going to take some time to get brand recognition around this, but it's certainly a good, strong brand to add to things like vSphere and Horizon and Workspace ONE. So
Yeah.
uh, I I
Just
joke
your
about it, but it's just one of those things. Technology and the branding changes over time.
Yeah, well, just to your point about Googling, if you Google Aria today, you're not going to get VMware Aria, you're going to get the hotel in Las Vegas.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is not a bad hotel. I will say it was
Oh,
a great
beautiful hotel.
restaurant in there. Anyway, we've gone down a completely
It's
different rabbit hole here.
it sounds like when we go to explore, Phil, we're moving to that restaurant, are we?
I would certainly make a trip over to Aria for the great Chinese
Okay.
food. So
So back to ESA, I was thinking of a question here. So assuming I have a vSAN 8 environment, my all my hardware is on the HCL, I'm validated. What do I do to enable ESA? Is it a checkbox, or in terms of overall configuration and how to start taking advantage of the new features, new technologies?
yeah, absolutely. So it's simple, just like vSAN is. It really is almost checkbox simple. You go in and you turn on VSA. It is going to give you an option inside of the wizard in vCenter to choose which architecture you want. And so that's the way that this works. It's not any more complex. It's truly a simple way of turning on the hyperconverged technology inside of a vCenter cluster. So, or inside of a vSphere cluster. So yeah, I mean, you get the choice, and the truth is that it's not just for your on-prem clusters. A lot of what we're seeing in the hyperscale cloud partners like AWS and Azure, the node types are all NVMe. So the original storage architecture really wasn't able to make use of that hardware as effectively as the ESA can. And so
Mhm.
as we're talking about adopting these node types with truly high performance disk, we wanted to make sure that we're getting the most out of it. And so ESA is a response to that. And so you see it not only in your own premises databases or your own premises data centers, but also in your public cloud, your third-party VMware cloud providers, basically everywhere that has the modern hardware, it's a possibility for you.
Okay, so going back to the enabling of the ESA, so it sounds like it's relatively straightforward, but you probably have to schedule some time for node reboots, that kind of thing. But I guess the question is, where this is, I don't want to say a bolt on to vSAN, but it's an additional component of vSAN. So in term, when it come upgrade time,
Yeah.
what happens to ESA? It's just in parallel with vSAN, or
So
with
with vSphere or vSAN?
vSAN. Sorry, vSAN.
Yeah, so it's not a bolt-on. It's actually a change to the core architecture. So,
In V8 only, though, right?
but in V8 only. So
Okay.
yeah, you choose between the two architectures. You're not going to have an original storage architecture with ESA kind of bolted on. It is a choice. And so I guess that's a great clarifying point, is that you choose between the architectures here. And with ESA, it completely changes the way that vSAN operates to make use of these new storage technologies, NVMe in particular. You still have the ability to do a hybrid array with the original storage architecture. You can still do an all-flash original storage architecture, or you can choose to do the ESA express storage architecture, and then you're going to get some additional benefits. They've changed the way that logging and log structures work because of and in response to the technology changes underneath. And then there's more of I guess just core changes that are actually using the NVMe technology underneath the covers.
Right. So I guess long story short, if you're building out a net new vSAN 8 environment, at some point, you're going to be asked the question, ESA or OSA?
Yes, and that's really the thing. And so that's part of the education here, is that you should know what the differences are between ESA and OSA, so that when the time comes, you're equipped with, which is the right choice. The original storage architecture, it still continues to live on, but it's really kind of a replacement to that technology. I mean, there's certainly shared underpinnings and things like that, but ESA really is around adopting that new hardware technology
Okay.
that's available to us.
So it wouldn't be one of our podcasts if I didn't ask you to break out your crystal ball. With everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, with the industry kind of looking towards faster solid state NVMe drives, do you think that, this is, I'm not asking you to go on the record here, but this is just a thought. Do you think OSA will eventually go away in vSAN 10, vSAN 11, vSAN 12, or do you think that's around for, the long haul?
So I'm going to actually quote VMware on this one, and they say no, not in the foreseeable future. So they actually do answer this question, and I think I understand why. There's still a lot of use cases where hybrid still makes sense to a customer. When you've got really large archival type data loads, data sets, you may want to have that capability to continue to use spinning disk. And so for that reason, I think that you're going to see the original storage architecture continue to be available and supported. And like I said, there are some shared underpinnings between the two. So I don't feel like it's VMware having to maintain two different complete code sets. I think there's shared pieces between them, but there's operational differences. And so, like I said, you choose between the two, whether you want to enable the ESA or not.
Right. So I guess, it'll really come down to the organization at the end of the day. If you're an organization who needs that extremely high performance, high or low latency rather, you're probably going to go down the ESA route. But if you're an organization who has petabytes worth of data, you're probably going to stick with OSA simply because it's from a financial perspective, it's more digestible, I guess, where you're using thick, big spinning disks.
And yes, there are two things though that make me question that a little bit. I'm
Hmm.
seeing the economics change, particularly with quad level flash drives, QLC drives. The densities have sort of leapfrogged beyond what you can do in spinning disk, and the economics, the cost of those sometimes are less than traditional flash drives. So your traditional SCSI based or SAS based flash drives are sometimes more expensive than what you can get in NVMe today. And so I do think that there will be a time where we see those economics change. But I'm also seeing vendors like Seagate and Western Digital who are continuing to invest in spinning disks. But I do think over time we'll see like the 10K SAS, things like that going away, simplified SATA, and the 7,200 RPM drives that we know and love in the SATA, that class will probably continue to live on, while some other things just there won't be enough demand to continue to maintain them.
Yeah, it's interesting the economics of it. Not too long ago, my wife's school, they have run an old Dell box, and they blew a drive, a 600 gig, SAS drive, and I had to buy a replacement for them, and it was $500-600 for 600 gigs, and I have an NVMe drive, 2 terabyte here, 7,000 megabytes a second for $100.
Right.
It's unreal. So you're right. Things are certainly starting to converge, and Flash is certainly looking like it may become cheaper than spinning disk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we talk about where we've come from, one of the major things that VMware changed was the concept of the caching layer between OSA and ESA. So originally, we used our fastest drive technology, SSD, for a caching layer. And so the original storage architecture always had some sort of a caching device. And even if it was an all flash array, you still had the concept of a caching device and a capacity tier. So you had your capacity with your larger drives, and then you had some level of caching. ESA has done away with that. So now it realizes, okay, we're using truly fast drives. There's not an advantage to having a caching layer. That's extra work, it's extra computation, it's extra cycles. Now we're truly using a full capacity tier of these fast drives. And so that's part of the underlying change as well, is you no longer have this concept of the caching layer, which makes sense when you're using spinning disks and you need to be able to commit things fast, but then destage. And that made perfect sense in 2012 when vSAN first came about. But in 2022, 10 years later, NVMe has changed the game on us. And so again, I feel like I keep saying the same thing, but it's us responding to the changes in that hardware.
Yeah. So on the hardware topic, so with the speed of these devices, the drive specifically, has anything changed with ESA in terms of requirements for networking? Obviously the internode connectivity needs to be extremely, extremely quick. Have we moved from kind of a requirement of 10 gig to 25 gig to 40 gig, or maybe even 100 gig links between the nodes?
So not officially.
Okay.
But yes, I think that we're certainly looking at 10 gig as an absolute minimum. That has been the minimum from a vSAN perspective. But yes, I do think that as we start talking larger clusters, 25 gig absolutely becomes a minimum requirement moving forward. We're just not there today. The ready nodes will come with 25 gig. It's where we're at, and so I think that the 25 gig does definitely become kind of that base level. That I think is the biggest encumbrance to some of our customers. So I feel like I'm stumbling over the answer on this one, but I do think the recommendation of 25 gig is where things need to be as we move forward, because
Okay.
we're just moving more data, and at the end of the day, if we're having to balance and do things under maximum load, that's where we're going to get the benefit. So yeah, as we look at the ready node profiles, as we look at things like that, they're all going to come equipped with 25 gig or 100 gig in some cases. But yeah, I mean, it's going to save us in those really maximum load kind of situations. But as I said, 10 gig has been the minimum from an OSA perspective. 25 gig as we move into the ESA will become our minimum.
And you said some customers are kind of, balking at the 25 gig networking idea for some reason. Is it strictly a financial thing, Phil, or is it what were
So
your thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, typically we've seen vSAN adoption and robo being very robust. A lot of companies look at vSAN and that becomes their standard for field offices and remote locations, remote hosting, that kind of thing. And oftentimes those networks are not as robust. So the way that I think about ESA today is we have to balance that need for high performance with the capabilities of the site that we're going into. And that's another reason I do think OSA lives on for probably several years or generations. We're going to have networking catch up with us and move to it. Branch locations with 10 gig, in my opinion, become pretty rare, at least from what I've seen and talked to customers. Gigabit is pretty common. 10 gig is less common when you're talking things outside of the data center. So I think ESA adoption is going to be more of a data centric adoption, at least initially, because we're going to have the 25 or 100 gig capabilities, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can fall down with 25, 40, 100 gig,
Right.
And all of the misguided steps of 40 gig. But again, I think it's just a requirement thing that we're missing when we start talking about remote locations. Now, the interesting thing around this is vSAN and the high performance with edge applications. This may drive more adoption. So if we're doing machine learning or AI type things at the edge, and analyzing video data in real time, and then transmitting the interesting things, not everything, but the interesting things back to a centralized location, then yeah, that's a very high performance application. Okay, we may want to invest in 25 gig at that edge location, and it may make sense. Outside of some of those interesting edge analysis and AI type applications, I'm not sure what can truly benefit, but I'm sure over time our developers will find some way of consuming that true capacity, that true performance at the edge.
Oh, guarantee. Wasn't Bill Gates famous for saying we'll never need more than, I don't know, was it 8 megs of RAM or something?
Yeah, I mean, and I remember the big brick type hard drives and things that we'll never fill that up, but
Right.
we did. We're off and running, creating way more than that today.
Well, yeah, before we started talking, I was telling you I bought a new phone, and the smallest size I can get a phone was 128 gigs. I was like, I don't need that, but that's the smallest you can get now. But anyway, that's here or there. So kind of to round things out a bit, Phil, who do you see being the target audience for ESA? Is it strictly those customers that demand the highest performance possible, or is this, as long as you have the appropriate hardware, it's a no-brainer to turn this on?
I think that I'm going to go more towards the latter. I think it's a no-brainer if you're doing new generation hardware with NVMe drives. And I would encourage customers to at least take a look at that, because the economics I'm seeing, the shift is that NVMe is often cheaper than your SAS SSDs at this point. So you may be able to get some extreme performance at a better cost point in your hardware. So if you've got the capabilities, if you've got NVMe native hardware, I would encourage you to take a look at ESA because again, it's not something that's going to cost you extra. It's included in every edition except for standard.
Hmm.
So as long as you have an edition that's, advanced or enterprise, then you're going to be qualified to run the new architecture. So really comes down to whether you've got the hardware.
And version 8, vSAN 8.
And version 8, yes.
Right.
But again, as you look at refreshes, as we're looking at generational upgrades, to my surprise, the Sphere 6, 7 came end of life very quick, it felt like. 7 is out there, it's mainstream, but it's going to have its time as well. But 8 is very mainstream, and I feel like we're working with more and more customers who are planning migrations, planning upgrades to version 8. We've got the first service pack for it out. There's a lot of things that align here. So it's a great time to look at this as well from a vSAN perspective.
Right. So if I'm a potential customer, Phil, and I want to look at this with the best partner out there, XenTegra, how do I engage you and the team to help me out?
Well, easiest way is reach out to your XenTegra client exec. They can get me and the other VMware folks here in the practice engaged. We can talk through what your requirements look like. We can help you quote the hardware as you're doing an upgrade. We can come in and do any advisory services. We offer free vSphere assessments, which cover vSAN. So that's a great way to get to know us for free. Those micro assessments we deliver, I think, provide a ton of value around, aligning you to best practices. And then it gives us information so that we can help you make great decisions and strategy. If you happen not to know who your XenTegra client exec is, well, you can always email sales@xentegra.com, and that'll get you connected with the right person.
Easy peasy. A single email address to get all the help you need.
We make it as easy as possible. And again, we try to lead with education. So if you're interested in this topic and have additional questions, feel free to email us. Feel free to reach out, and we can have a one-on-one discussion to go as deep as you want to go on the technology.
I love it. So I think, Phil, that's probably a good place to leave it for this episode. I think this was a good session. I certainly learned a lot about OSA versus ESA and what it's capable of, this new the new architecture. So I'm hopeful that the audience got the same takeaways as I did. Yeah, I always enjoy these chats because I feel like I'm almost quizzing you a little bit, but it's because I want to know. I'm curious, naturally curious guy, and you certainly have the VMware brain to kind of give me the answers I'm looking for in a way that I can digest, a way that I can understand.
Well, I always enjoy these conversations too, because it's fun to go into some of these topics. And again, I love helping spread the news, spread the word out there. That's a core tenet for me, is to kind of help everybody. The saying is, rising tides raise all ships. And so I really love getting the information out there. And there's so much more here in the vSAN realm. I feel like we'll have maybe one more session talking about some of the other technologies, because there's some really cool things that are here that I'd love to kind of unwrap, things that people don't realize have been added to the product. So hopefully we can get to that in a few weeks.
Yeah, that'd be a good session though. Comparing the old to the new. Almost point by point, and walk through it. That'd be great.
Well, Barry, as always, I enjoy these chats. I hope everybody has enjoyed today's podcast, and we will be here next week with a new topic.
Thanks, Phil.
Have a great one, everyone. Thanks, Barry.